Hello world, Frida Reba Darcy and Patricia O'Connor here, and we're probably not going to have a whole lot of frames per second because I'm operating off of my laptop tonight, mainly for ease and convenience. I just basically flip it around and I don't have to mess with quite as much setup. What you see before you is a Bougainvillea. We're going to repot this Bougainvillea. It's been in that pot for probably just about a year, a little over a year, and we're going to repot it tonight. We're going to put it in a different pot. A couple of reasons for that. Let me just tell you about this. This is Humphrey Bougainvillea, and have a little look here. Let's see, what's the front? Probably that. You know, instead of cutting those roots, we're gonna act like that's something to be proud of, and that's probably the front. That's the other side. We've got our one little branch here, and in a minute, like not even too many, this thing will put out Bougainvillea flowers, which are actually leaf petals with a tiny, tiny, tiny little flower in the center. It's almost like that one little white dot in the center is actually the flower. And the big things that look like the flower are just a modified leaf. And that's also the answer to how do they bloom so long? Because those are leaves. It's going to keep that all season. Anyway, this guy was about 4 feet tall when I cut it down to probably that tall. And I chopped the roots until they would fit in the palm of my hand. And then I wired them down in here. And as I recall, they were fragile. If you tried to bend the roots, you would end up with 2 handfuls of roots, because they were like, I heard somebody say that their Bougainvillea was sick because the roots were like glass. Maybe mine was too, or it might be that that's just the way those guys are. I had to be really, really careful to maintain a small little mass of soil, just palm size, and I put it down into this pot. I wired it down very gently, and then we let the branches that were going on at that time grow. Now, this is a tropical. Here in the part of California where I live in, you do not have to bring them in. It doesn't get freezing cold here much. And you do see them in people's yards. And they stay green all year here. I don't know that they do that everywhere. You can see how the leaves are a little curled right there. And also, if the lighting were a little bit better, you might see that right now the leaves are a little pale. It's not a big fan. Bougainvilleas being tropicals, they're not big, huge fan of cold. So you can get some wrinkled leaves. You can get a little discoloration. You can even have it drop leaves when it gets below 50. I found that to be more so the case in a bonsai pot than when it's growing in the side of your yard. And these things will get really, really big. They like to hold onto walls. I mean, it's not a vine necessarily, but as a shrub or something, it will grow very, very tall. And they love to just like grow along right neck, lean up against a wall for support. And they'll just grow really tall and just cover an entire side of a building in whatever flowers they are. And those flowers can be pink to red. And this one makes very, very red flowers. And my thinking was that I wasn't going to be making a really old bonsai. I took a tree or a shrub that I bought from Lowe's for $29. And it was about 4 feet tall. And I cut it down to that size. And I tried to get just enough roots in here for that size pot. But from what I had said about the roots earlier, I actually came away with less than that. I just kind of got a little lump in here more to the center. In the winter, last winter, I brought the tree in because knowing that they're not crazy about 50-degree temperatures, I had already watched the temperatures drop a couple of times, and I had seen the discoloration of the leaves, the way they looked a little wilty but still stayed green and would recover if it warmed up. So last year I decided to bring the tree in for part of the winter, and was just really starting to recover from the top chop that I did. Then I discovered that once I brought it into the warm house for the winter, the trunk grew by probably a third. And I then had a tree that was disproportionately long, too long, and it hadn't even healed up the trunk chop yet. And I also was hoping that this branch would come out, but in that year that it had been, that winter, that branch never moved. It stayed just a sprout on the side of the trunk. And so, with the thing getting too long, I did a second chop to bring it back to the height you see now, which did cause this branch to then decide that it was called up to then be the new leader. So that's kind of what I've had going on there. If it does that again, I will chop it back to here and we'll make the tree go this way. That is what's good about Bougainvilleas. This can be an indoor bonsai in the winter, especially, because it's not going to like most winters in most places unless you just live in a temperate climate or in a tropical climate. Okay, now, the other thing about Bougainvilleas, if you ever drive by and see some landscaper or some arbor person has cut down a huge bougainvillea and they are stacked up like fire logs out by the street, freshly cut, if you pick those up, you can root those. I mean, even like huge bougainvillea branches or stumps or trunks, you can root those. And just basically how they do it, I watched somebody do it on a YouTube video, and there's different versions of it. But basically, they like heat. They like to stay wet. So somebody took a styrofoam cooler, like what you would buy at the 7-Eleven on a beach trip, and put about an inch or two of sand in the bottom. And then they put vermiculite or pumice or something in the rest of it. And then they poured water in that so that sand was wet. And then they took the logs that were probably, this big around, a bunch of them, like a dozen or half a dozen, 6 in the bottom of the cooler. And they chopped bit away at the edges to give them more surface area on the bottom. Put a little rooting hormone on that and stabbed them in the sand. And then they put a plastic bag over that so that they would get hot. And then they taped that up, and then they took that off in 6 weeks, and everything was rooted and flushing out. So, yeah, they are. Now, the other side to that is whoever did that probably lived in the tropics. And yeah, when you live in those places, you can almost get rust to root. However, that is not necessarily just indicative of that. You don't have to live in India or Vietnam to get a bougainvillea to do that. Same with olives. There's some olive trees and some parking lots close by that aren't no longer maintained, and I'm worried about somebody. I'm going to go up in with my pruners and just clip a little quarter size, little piece of a swollen base of a branch or something, and you watch me root that and make a Shohin. So easy to do. If nothing else, if you've watched Aussie Bonsai Bloke, what he has done over the years with some of his Australian trees, when he has an opportunity to cut one up, roots and all, he still doesn't bother. He cuts it off, just digs out the ground a little bit to make sure he's got all the flare he wants, and then he cuts it off with the chainsaw right there. Maybe comes back and cleans up his cut, nips the edges of it like what I was talking about the other guys did with the bougainvilleas, and then dopes them up and plants them straight away. So that's all just some tips about some of the things you can get, some of these tropical or like olive trees and stuff to do, little ways around it. This has been a worthwhile little tree to grow. However, what I thought would be really neat would be the red flowers, the so pink, they're almost red. They're closer to red than pink, I think. Against the yellow crackly pot. That is true. However, this tree has got quite a bit. This tree is still in development. And I overpotted it. I overpotted it in that this is a really, really nice pot. It's a crackly pot. It's a tokonoma pot. I bought it at a bonsai retail, but having said that, I paid, it was an expensive pot either way. Especially, you know, if you were, well, it doesn't really have anything to do with size or we wouldn't be into bonsai. But this was certainly, this is a $29 tree, and this is way more than that in this pot. So that's what I mean when I say I overpotted it. Other options for this guy, when we get there, would be something else like this, or maybe something else like this. But these are really good pots. This is what our Ponderosa came in, the one that I call Hoss, that I just repotted this past season. I mean, just actually a couple of months ago. Hoss came in this pot, and I said it wasn't an appropriate pot necessarily for a pine because it's glazed. Evergreens should go in unglazed pots, was the rule I'd heard. Now you don't have to behave by that, but I get it. I actually see why that's a thing. I prefer that. And unglazed pots, usually the rule of thumb to that is if you have something that loses all of its foliage in the winter, the glazed pots will give you a color, you know, and you might match the color with the season and the time when the tree is bare, or you might match the color to the foliage. Pick a season and match that to the foliage. So that's just a little bit of the rule of thumb. So those are a couple of options. And the other option is this is a pattern pot. This is a production pot. It has the right amount of stuff. It's got cloud feet. It's unglazed. It would be good for a pine or an oak because it's unglazed. It's got good drainage. It's got good wire holes. It has 4 feet and should be fairly stable. I just cleaned it with some oil of bambino, so it's got a nice little shine to it. But this is like a $6 buy it at a nursery in the dusty corner where they sell bonsai supplies pot. It doesn't have any type of stamp on the bottom of it. It doesn't say what country or what kiln or anything historical on there. So that's just what we get there. However, this is the pot we're going to go with. As far as this tree is concerned, where it's growing here, it is sort of an evergreen. I do want to free this pot up for something that's closer to being finished that I don't have in mind yet. I don't have anything in mind yet for this pot except that it is a pot that's a little bit special. And right now I've overpotted the Bougainvillea. And also right now this would be a good time to repot the Bougainvillea, which brings us to game day. So yeah, that's been a little bit about my experience with Bougainvilleas. This guy, I have allowed it to do the escape route thing. So it has roots coming out of the bottom of the drainage holes. And like my other Shohin trees, they are they usually sit in like a brownie tin. Not a brownie tin, like a baking tin and oven tin. That's what it is. With some usually older substrate. And this just gives the root something to escape into. How is that? Is that okay? Is that okay? leave that alone. That's probably okay. Cut that off flush. So now I'm cutting off all the support, and then I had thought to get one of my trays out to dump this substrate into, and I forgot. So we're just going to dump that out on the rotating table. It's a small amount. Will live. This would have been too small. Also a pattern pot. I got this the same day. I got this little pot the same day I got my cork bark oak at Johnny Cedar's store, Groveway. This is, like I said earlier, this one came from Deadwood, South Dakota. I like this little pot a lot. It's just a really nice looking little pot. I haven't checked it for a nick. There is something on there in the way of something stamped on there. I'll probably have to get a better look at it. And this is the guy we're going to go with. So, let's see. What do I have? Several things. Rake some of this stuff off the top a little. I've got some substrate standing by in a little brownie tin. And I have my wire and stuff standing by. I don't always leave trees wired in, but I always wire trees in, and that's because I don't feel good about the way I'm treating my trees if I haven't done that. And I say it that way because I do feel calamitous. I have, it's not like I'm too big to play in the house or nothing, but I just feel like, you know, you bump into something, or you hear people talking about, you know, the birds did this or the squirrels did that. And I try to be mindful of getting my trees in a position that is flattering on the going in. And the times that I've done that, it's made a big enough impression on me that I don't think I'll do that again. I mean, also, experience is catching your mistake the moment you repeat it. But yeah. So a lot of times I'll wire a tree down solid so that I will feel like I'm doing my due diligence. When I do that, it gives me a good feeling that I'm taking care of, you know, I've invested my heart and my time into the care for this thing, and by wiring it in, I feel like I'm putting on the seatbelts, or, you know, I'm saying you were worth protecting. Then sometime later, I'll go, yeah, this thing feels really nice and solid in its container, and then the focus will be in making sure that you don't cause any damage with that same wire. So at that point, a lot of times, if I can see a wire up on the surface, or if I know that it's not too far from the surface, I'll go in and give that guy a snip and get it out of there to where I won't have to be concerned. I won't have to be concerned with it biting into the roots on the bari. Or the feet, as I hear them always refer to it. So that's kind of that on wiring trees in. I'm pro wiring trees in. It just helps me feel like that that I'm being as diligent as I need to be, while at the same time, I don't want to get too nuts about it. I don't want to see everything get tore up because it's trying to rise up out of the pot. And that can't happen because you've got you've got it wired down. Both things could be true. I'm wanting to be really careful. I need to cut those screens. Those screens had a little frog foot kind of wire thing happening, I believe, if I remember. But I don't want to bang up the bottom of this pot. There we go. We are free. The inside of the pot is white clay. That is a pretty little pot. And that is our root base. And I would say it looks pretty good. It looks pretty happy. I'm just going to try to break this up a little bit. You know, it's funny. We overpotted this tree, and now we're about to overpot this tree. And by that I mean two totally different things both times. When this tree was overpotted first time, it was a $20 tree in a $100 pot. That's a metaphor. Those aren't actual figures. Now I'm going to put it in a slightly bigger pot. Which is to say that I'm going to give it more room. So we overpotted it by one sense of the word, and now we might be guilty of overpotting. You see how easily? That's what I mean when I talk about those roots were glass. I probably would have came away. Now that's not too much, but between you and I probably would have had more roots had I just cut them with scissors rather than try to untangle that by hand, because they are very much trying to get that little bit untangled out of the screen, and you're just, there we go. Win, lose, or draw. That's a lot more root than, no, that's probably about the same amount of root that we had last time. However, last time this thing was in a 1 gallon pot and was rather large. And then we went from that to this, to a mound of soil and a little ball of roots about this big. So give this a quick little tease here. This might be a good time to bring this out too. I have been watching lessons from Mariah Live. I kind of upped my subscription to Ryan and his crew for their lessons. And I've been thinking about, you know, the takeaway on some of this and looking at what he's doing and going back to something he said, and this is going to be on one of his free videos that you can find on YouTube somewhere. I heard him once say, "Speak bonsai to me." You know, talk to me in a language that we can both understand, and the conveyance of our ideas won't be lost in some abstract art design talk, but we can actually, you know, convey the little nuances of things as they come up in bonsai design, for instance. And what I was watching the other day was him talking about bringing your trees into a bonsai vortex. And he was quick to warn you that, you know, if you go off and start Googling that, you're going to probably find out that, I think if I understood where he was coming from, that it pretty much starts with him right there. That's a culmination of him, pretty much by his own admission at some point, learning under almost like institutionalized learning, and then bringing that back to America and trying to put all of that experience in bonsai. And what he learned was from somebody who stared a lot and but didn't say anything. So now he's trying to conceptualize what it is he's done, and we have our words. We talk about sometimes whether or not we should even be using bonsai language. Like, is somebody being fancy or arrogant or something if they talk in Japanese terms? Maybe maybe you look like you're using big words or putting on airs or something. I don't get that for the most part, but I do get it in one sense. You may have noticed I have a bit of a southern drawl. And whereas I would never be one to say, oh yeah, you're going to try to sound like you're this when you're not. I'm all for, as much as humanly possible, sounding educated. I am all for that. However, there's a way that you're supposed to say bonsai, which it would be the one thing that I would say in some, it would sound really bizarre coming from me. Well, I'll just try it. Bonsai. If I were sitting there just going off a mile a minute the way I do, and in the middle of all of that, say bonsai, that would just sound, that would almost sound disrespectful. So I get it, in a way. But on the other way, this is talking about, we're having a general conversation about language. And when it comes time to talk about art, so much of it can be subjective. As much as you can possibly bring that into terms that everybody will easily understand, the better off everybody will be. And that's what I would say. That's what I would say about that. I think that is really cool, the way that he is. It's the bonsai vortex, bringing a tree into the bonsai vortex. By that, what he basically was saying is it doesn't mean from this moment forward the tree is a bonsai tree. It might be a starter, it might be in a terracotta pot, building root base, or it might be in a colander. But what it is something that from this moment on, everything you do to and about that will be done with the idea of better bonsai in mind. And that's, I hope I nailed kind of the gist of it. The bonsai vortex, when you bring a tree into the vortex, and as the vortex describes this little circular thing, and you can look at that seasonally, but you're not going all the way around. But you can look at that in the time that you spend with the tree also. And, how many times does the tree go around the circle? And at different points in this circle, he would draw off little avenues and say, this is the part where we're working on our tertiary, and this is the part where we're working on, branch development, and this is where we're working on, root development, and this is where and it's just starting to break it down into a language and a lesson that I can see is somebody taking what they learned through abuse and trying to make it an intellectual practice that is sustainable and is something to build off of. If you're involved in your teaching and over time something changes, then noted. But you've got a base to start off with. And I think that's really neat. So I would say that whenever I was replanting this bougainvillea, I was at a place in the bonsai vortex where this tree was ready for something that was a little bit more finished. And what I actually thought was that I would put it in this cute little yellow pot, and against those blossoms, those bougainvillea blossoms, we would get away with that, and it would look really good. And because it doesn't stop in the winter here in our part of California, I would likely get away with a lot of growth, and it would heal over its wound rather quickly. Except that it grew long, and I would repeatedly have to cut it back. So, that was what was wrong with that little rule-breaking idea I had about how to turn something in from a planter into a bonsai quickly. I don't think the idea was wrong. That's a cool-looking little tree, and I've already got a kind of a little plot or plan in mind. Whenever I have to chop it again, at least I will have this branch here to continue the trunk that way without it continually growing longer, which is good. That's a plus. So the thing that I had in the end where I'd gone wrong was I probably shouldn't have put that in a really nice spot. So we're going to fix that. And yeah, this pot is a little big for the pines that I've been working on. But it would have been a good choice for a pine or an oak or something like that also. But like I said, it is just a pattern pot. But it took a nice clean, so there's still reason to be pretty happy with that. Also, we moved our position in the living room. We're back in a place on the couch where we're back looking out across the room, changing our view a little bit and our perspective. Get that guy up there. Do that. I may rebend this wire when the other one comes through. Let's do that. Yeah. Go, hot rod, go. It's okay, even it up. Awesome. So I went ahead and put wire to, I put copper wire to the ponderosa. I got some nice shape out of it. I don't think I'm done. I want to put more shape to it. I like the way it looks. I really like the way it looks. The ponderosa I'm talking about. But I also think that for a tree its size, it has a rack. I mean, it looks like an elk or a moose. It is a wide tree for, it's like a 5-inch tree that's 8 inches around or something. It's a little big. So if you see what I'm doing here, I'm just putting a little bit of twist on this wire. I'm gonna pull that guy down just a little bit. I'd rather find my better pliers, but these will work for no more than what we're doing. No, don't do that. I want my other pliers. There. Okay. So apparently that's part one. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And our next video will be in 2 minutes when I start for part two. And yeah, thank you so much for watching.